It started with a rule so strange that no one in the town ever questioned it. There was a girl who was never seen in daylight. Not once, not ever. People didn't talk about her openly. If you asked, they would hesitate, glance at each other, and then change the subject. Because in this town, some things were not meant to be discussed. And this was one of them. But one night, that rule was broken. And what people saw should not have been possible. Welcome to Night Archive, where some stories don't just stay in the past, they wait to be found. Before we go further, if you enjoy stories like this, take a second to like the video and subscribe, because the deeper we go, the darker it gets. The town itself was small, quiet, the kind of place where nothing ever really happens. Wooden houses, empty streets, a silence that felt heavier than it should. But every evening, just after sunset, something changed. Lights would slowly turn on one by one, and at the very edge of the town, there was a house, old, isolated, and always just a little darker than the rest. That's where she lived. No one knew her real name. They just called her the girl. Some said she was sick. Others believed she was cursed. But the oldest people in town, the ones who had seen more than they should, they never explained. They only said one thing: stay away from that house after midnight. And for years, everyone listened, except one person. His name was Daniel. Daniel wasn't from the town. He had moved there recently after inheriting his grandfather's old property. And unlike everyone else, he didn't believe in stories. At least, not at first. The first time he heard about the girl, he laughed. A girl who never comes out in daylight. It sounded like a myth, a way to scare children or keep people away from something else. But then he started noticing things. Small things at first, like how no one ever walked near that house, even during the day. Like how delivery workers would leave packages at the edge of the road, never going closer. Like how dogs would refuse to go near it. They would stop, growl, and pull away, as if something inside was watching them. And then one evening, Daniel saw something, just for a second. A shadow standing behind the window, still, watching. He couldn't see her face, but he knew someone was there. And for the first time, he felt it. That strange, heavy silence, like the air itself was holding its breath. The next morning, he asked around, carefully, trying not to sound too curious. But the answers were always the same. Avoid it. Don't go there. Some things are better left alone. But Daniel wasn't the kind of person who walked away from a mystery. And the more people avoided it, the more he wanted to understand it. So he started digging. Old records, local archives, anything he could find. And that's when things got strange. Because according to the town records, that house should have been empty for over 40 years. No registered residents, no ownership changes, Nothing. And yet, every night, the lights turned on, and someone stood behind that window, watching. But that wasn't the worst part, because buried deep in the town's oldest records, Daniel found something else. A single line, faded, almost erased. The child must not be seen in the light. He stared at it for a long time, trying to understand. What child? And why not in the light? And then he noticed something even more disturbing. There was no name, just the child, as if she wasn't supposed to exist. That night, Daniel made a decision. He was going to see her. That night, Daniel didn't tell anyone where he was going. The town was quiet, too quiet. Even the wind felt absent, as if everything was waiting. He stepped outside just after sunset. The sky was fading into darkness, and one by one, the lights in the town began to turn on. But his eyes were fixed on one place, that house, at the edge of everything. For a moment, he hesitated, not because he believed the stories, but because something inside him was telling him to turn back. But he didn't, and that was his first mistake. The closer he got, the colder it felt. Not normal cold, not the kind you feel on your skin. This was different. It felt like the air itself was draining something from him. The road leading to the house was empty. No footprints, no tire marks, nothing. As if no one had walked there in years. And yet the lights inside were on, soft, dim flickering. Daniel stopped just a few steps away from the front door. For a moment, everything went silent, completely silent. Then he heard it, a sound from inside, not loud, not clear, but unmistakable. Someone was moving slowly, carefully, like they knew he was there. Daniel swallowed. His heart was beating faster now, but curiosity was stronger than fear. He stepped forward and knocked. Once, no answer. He waited, then knocked again. This time, something changed. The light inside shifted, like a shadow had passed in front of it. And then the door opened, slowly, just enough to reveal darkness inside. No one stood there, but the door was open, and for a second, Daniel considered leaving. But instead, he stepped inside, and the moment he did, the door closed behind him, on its own. The air inside was heavy, thick, hard to breathe. The house smelled old, like something had been sealed away for too long. The walls were covered in faded patterns, and the floor creaked under every step. But what disturbed him the most was how quiet it was. No footsteps, no breathing, nothing, except a faint sound from upstairs, a slow, dragging noise. Daniel froze. Every instinct told him to leave. But then he remembered the line. The child must not be seen in the light. And suddenly, he understood something. She wasn't hiding from people. People were hiding her. He looked toward the staircase. Dark, narrow, and leading somewhere he wasn't meant to go. But he went anyway. Each step creaked louder than the last, as if the house itself was warning him. Halfway up, the temperature dropped even more. His breath became visible, and the sound, it stopped completely, as if whatever was upstairs was now waiting. For him, he reached the top. A long hallway stretched in front of him, doors on both sides, all closed except one, at the very end, slightly open, a faint light coming from inside. Daniel walked toward it, slowly, carefully. Every step felt heavier, and then he heard it again. A whisper, soft, barely there, but it wasn't coming from the room. It was coming from behind him. He turned, nothing. The hallway was empty, but the feeling that someone was standing right behind him didn't go away. He turned back toward the door and pushed it open. Inside, there was a chair, and sitting in it was a girl, still, silent, her head slightly lowered, her hands resting in her lap. For a moment, Daniel thought she wasn't real, because she didn't move, didn't react, didn't even breathe. And then, slowly, she lifted her head and looked at him. Her eyes didn't reflect the light, not at all. They were empty, not blind, not dark, just wrong. Daniel felt it instantly. That deep, unnatural fear. The kind that doesn't come from danger, but from something that shouldn't exist. He tried to speak, but before he could, she did. "You're not supposed to be here." Her voice was soft, calm, but something about it felt off, like it didn't belong to her. Daniel stepped back slightly. "Who are you?" he asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she tilted her head, just slightly, and then said something that made his blood run cold. "You came before, too." Daniel froze. What? But she didn't explain. She just kept looking at him, unblinking. And then she smiled, not wide, not exaggerated, just enough to feel wrong. And then she said, "It always happens like this." Daniel didn't move. For a moment, it felt like time itself had stopped. "It always happens like this." Her words echoed in his mind. "What do you mean?" he asked slowly. The girl didn't answer right away. Instead, she stood up, slowly, too slowly, like her body wasn't used to moving. And as she stepped closer, Daniel noticed something strange. Her shadow wasn't matching her movements. It lagged behind, just slightly, like it belonged to something else. "You come here," she said quietly. "You ask questions, and then you try to leave." Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. "Try to leave," he repeated. The girl tilted her head again. "But you never do." Silence filled the room, heavy, pressing. Daniel took a step back. "No, I can leave," he said, trying to sound confident. But even he didn't believe it, because deep down, something already felt wrong. Like the house wasn't just a place anymore. It was something else, something aware. The girl watched him carefully, and then she asked a question. "Do you remember your first night here?" Daniel frowned. "Of course I do." But even as he said it, his mind hesitated. Something about that memory felt incomplete, blurred, like parts of it were missing. The girl stepped closer. Now she was only a few feet away. "You don't," she said softly. And then she raised her hand, not to touch him, but to point behind him. Daniel slowly turned, and what he saw made his heart stop. The door was gone, not closed, not hidden, gone. The wall behind him was solid, unbroken, like there had never been a door at all. Daniel stepped forward quickly, touched the wall. Cold, real, impossible. This isn't possible," he whispered. But the girl's voice came from behind him. "It is, when you've already been here." He turned back to her. "What are you talking about?" And that's when everything changed. The light in the room flickered. Once, twice, and then, for a split second, Daniel saw something else. Not the room, not the girl, but a different version of it. Older, darker, and filled with something that shouldn't have been there. Then the light returned, and the girl was still standing there. But now her expression had changed. No longer calm, no longer quiet. There was something else in her eyes now. Recognition. "You stayed longer this time," she said. Daniel's breathing became uneven. "What do you mean this time?" The girl didn't answer directly. Instead, she walked past him, toward the wall where the door used to be. And then she placed her hand on it, slowly, carefully, as if she had done it many times before. "You always find it eventually," she whispered. And then she pushed, and the wall moved, just slightly, revealing a narrow gap, dark, endless. Daniel stepped back. No, but something inside him pulled him closer. A feeling he couldn't control, like he had already made this choice before. Like this moment had already happened. The girl looked at him one last time, and for the first time, there was something human in her expression. Not fear, not anger, but sadness. "I tried to stop you before," she said quietly, "but it doesn't change anything." Daniel shook his head. "This doesn't make sense," but his voice was weaker now, distant, like he was losing something important. The girl stepped aside, and the darkness behind the wall seemed to move, not physically, but in a way that made it feel alive. "You wanted to know the truth," she said. "So go." Daniel hesitated, just for a second, and then he stepped forward, into the darkness, and the moment he did, everything disappeared. The house, the room, the girl, all of it, gone. And suddenly he was outside, standing in the middle of the road. The sun was rising. Daniel blinked, confused, disoriented. For a moment, he thought it was over, that he had imagined everything. But then he saw it, the house. Behind him, dark, silent, empty, no lights, no movement, nothing, as if no one had ever lived there. And that's when he noticed something else. People, standing at a distance, watching him, just like they always did, whispering, avoiding eye contact, Daniel walked toward them. "What happened?" he asked, but no one answered, until finally an old man stepped forward, his face pale, his voice shaking. "You went inside," Daniel nodded. "Yes." The old man stared at him for a long moment, and then said something that didn't make sense. "No one has come out of that house in over 40 years. Daniel felt the ground shift beneath him. "What?" But the old man wasn't finished. "We've seen people go in," he said slowly, "but they never come back." Silence, heavy, unavoidable. Daniel turned back toward the house, but now something was different. The window. At the top floor, there was a shadow, standing there still, watching, and this time he could see her clearly. The girl, unmoving, unblinking, exactly where she had been before, like nothing had changed, like he had never been inside. And then she lifted her hand, slowly, and pressed it against the glass. And for a moment, Daniel understood. He hadn't escaped. He had just been replaced. The person standing in the road was not the same one who entered. And somewhere inside that house, something else was still waiting, watching for the next person who asks too many questions. So if you ever find yourself in a place like this, and people tell you not to go near a certain house, you might want to listen, because some doors don't lead back. If this story made you question what's real, comment below what you think really happened, and share this with someone who loves dark mysteries, because some stories are too strange to keep to yourself. And if you want more stories like this, you already know where to find them. Night Archive, because some things were never meant to be seen in the light.